Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Monday, August 12th, 2024. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Monday, everyone. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Right now, you're seeing price hang out near the previous week's highs after reaching the midpoint of the recent impulse sell-off. As you recall here, the price reached a high of 5,600 here, sold off significantly on a 3-day basis, finding a low of 51.20, and then what we were looking for Monday was for a snapback to the midpoint of that range at 53.60 and change in order to cement a new key range. We got that new key range right here, and that key range gives us major boundaries to watch and also future targets as well. We're now hanging out near the previous week's high price right here, and this is going to be something to keep an eye on because now price is approaching 5,400 for a retest from below. 5,400 is a major market structure level for the ES. There was a transition back below that level, and the return to that zone is going to be very important here. If there's any push into 5,400 or a failure to maintain acceptance beyond 5,400, that could lead to the next move back down to retest recent lows or perhaps even get into the next key level below, which is 5,000. So this thing works in 400-point increments, 5,000 to 5,400, 5,400 up toward 58, and below 5,000 is 4,600 here. So this is going to be an important retest early on. To start the week, you're going to want to keep an eye on the previous week's high price. The previous week's high up to 5,400 is going to be very important. If there's any rejection up there, that could pull price back into the previous week's range, back toward the weekly midpoint. The weekly midpoint of last week's range, 52.53. 52.53. So if there's any rejection of prices up near these levels, we could be looking at a return back toward 52.53 as a midpoint retest here early this week. So we'll keep an eye on that level as we begin the week. If we take a look here at the NQ, similar price action for the NQ here, hanging out near the previous week's highs at the moment. Super narrow range in overnight trading for both the ES and the NQ. The ES is trading just 29% of average range right now on a 10-day basis. Super narrow range. The NQ is at 27% of ADR. 27% of average range. And you can see here this tiny range versus the range we've seen over the last 10 sessions has been huge. And right now this is very small. So 27% of average is super tiny. Keeping an eye on the previous week's high again, because any pullback here from those levels could return price back toward the midpoint of last week's range, back into the range below. That's going to be 18,012. 18,012, somewhere about right there. Now, keep in mind, this is a big week for data, but not Monday. We have inflation data that's going to be out Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are going to be big-time economic data points, including core PPI and PPI data on Tuesday, and core CPI and CPI data on Wednesday. The market is going to be watching for those events Tuesday and Wednesday. So today could be mostly range bound. Look to fade the edges today, as the market likely looks to hold or maintain a holding pattern ahead of Tuesday and Wednesday's high range price action. So again, keep an eye on the previous week's high price. If any rejection occurs, we could be working our way back into the previous week's range. All right, let's take a look here at crude oil. Crude oil here showing strength for the fourth straight session. Incredible strength back up the way. This thing rejecting a key range low. As we mentioned for the ES and the NQ, we have minted newly developed key ranges here by reaching that midpoint of the recent impulse move, and this is what makes these key ranges so impressively powerful. Price came down to the key range low here, rejected on 2 days. It looked like we might see a failure there, but instead we saw bulls defend, and now we've seen this thing squeeze back to the midpoint here of the key range and is now working its way back toward the upper end of the key range. That's 80.62. 80.62 is the top end of that key range, and right now very, very strong movement back up the range. Another thing to keep an eye on here is the fact that price is approaching for a retest at the FOMC key level from July 31st. That level was offered, price dropped, found a strong low, and now we're snapping back to that price. That's 77.95 right here. We're about 10 to 15 cents away from that level at the moment. Watch that level for a retest here up ahead. That's also where CVPOC is, right in that zone. But the fact that price is pushed through the midpoint at 76.55, bounced off the key range low, opens the door to 80.62 up ahead as this market continues to regain form from the recent lows. We take a look here at gold futures. Gold right here showing some initial strength. Again, this one continues to maintain an overall uptrending structure, but has continued to see very deep pullbacks, very deep counter trend rotations after up moves and new highs. At the moment, this thing is seeing some strength after the recent deep pullback. We could be looking at another new high ahead. Each new high has been a shallow new high followed by a deep pullback. So if we see a new high, it could be somewhere between 25.20 and 25.30, and then we could see a big counter trend pullback from there, followed by another push higher. This market continues to maintain an overall uptrending structure, but also has maintained a range-bound development here between this market structure right here, 24.80 to 22.80. So a very clear range-bound price action, but still with an upward trend. So again, we could be looking at a little bit higher prices, maybe a modest higher high, but followed by another deep pullback up ahead. Taking a look here at the YM. YM trading a super narrow range as well, 26% of ADR. 26% of ADR inside day right now. Like the ES and the NQ, keeping an eye on the previous week's high price and the previous week's close. Any rejection there, and we could be returning back into the previous week's range down to the midpoint 39,156. 39,156 is the previous week's midpoint. If there's any failure in this zone here, we could be rotating back into that area. Now, unlike the ES and the NQ, the YM has yet to reach the midpoint of its impulsive move. That is 39,984. At some point, you'd like to see that midpoint tested, and you'd like to see it sooner than later. You know, sometime in the first part of the week, it would be nice to get that level, and then we have ourselves a newly minted key range here to work with moving forward. So just keep that in mind. But right now, previous week's high and close going to be something to keep an eye on. This could continue to be mostly a range-bound Monday ahead of PPI and CPI Tuesday, Wednesday. Looking at Bitcoin, right now Bitcoin down 1 2/3%. A little bit of a pullback here. It did form a very strong low off the 50,000 market structure level, snapped back to 60,000 here. That's very important. Again, this thing trades in 10,000 point increments, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and down below you got 50 to 40, and so on. And if this thing can regain the 60,000 level, reestablish acceptance above it, could be looking at another push back towards 70 up ahead. This early pullback to begin the week, especially after last week's strength here, could be an opportunity for a check mark week higher. Can this thing return back toward 65K this week from these early lows? We'll see. But right now showing some early strength off the lows, especially after a strong push higher from the 50K level. This pullback could open the door to a stretch move back towards 6,500 up ahead. Failure to hold 58K, and we're rotating back toward 54. Lastly, looking at ETH. ETH right now up 3% at the moment. This thing showing a failed new low in a very modest up move. Also found a strong low off the 2200 market structure level. From 2200, you're looking at a 700 point move higher to 2900. So from this low, can this thing stretch to 2900 up ahead? If so, again, there's the opportunity here to regain 2,900, and from 2,900 you got 36 up above. So right now, holding between the 22 and 2,900 market structure levels. Failed new low could also open up a bit of a check mark higher, which could lead this thing up toward 2,900 this week. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this develops the rest of the week. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.